Hi, everybody. George Cow here, and I'm with Andy Freeland. Andy, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, George.
So, Andy and I have known each other for a while, and uh, we've known each other in a business context. Andy does branding for businesses. He does amazing, very visionary kind of branding, marketing work. He's also developing a website and course platforms for those of you who are thinking of creating your own website, having a community on your website, having courses on your website. Talk to Andy because he's developing something really cool. But I wanted to talk with Andy today about something different. I want to talk about spirituality because I made a post some time ago, and Andy made a comment about what he believes the spiritual world is like, or our greater reality, as sometimes I call it, universe, how our physical bodies and this life relates to what happens afterwards or what happens outside of our normal consciousness. And I really liked Andy's comment, and I know he has a lot more to say about this. And I just thought we had a discussion about what we believe might be true, just kind of playing around with some ideas. Of course, nobody knows anything for sure, but it's, I think, having some thoughts, some philosophy around what's really real, like what's actually going on with our bodies, our minds, our consciousness, spirit, reality, having a philosophy that we believe is compelling, it may be true. It helps me anyway to really live with more courage, purpose, love, forgiveness, curiosity, openness. And so that's why I feel like, having a really interesting, compelling philosophy is good for living life well. But Andy, I don't know, maybe I'll let you start because you haven't had a chance to say anything. Do you want to share what's on your mind? You could start anywhere with anything here.
Yeah, so I'll just start by echoing what George said, that my main form of work in the world for the past decade has been in doing brand and web design. And alongside of that is all of my sort of extracurricular activities and interests. And I mean, as far as I can remember, I've been on a sort of quest for truth, I guess you could say. And very early on, I recognized there was more to reality than what I was told, which is either just a purely scientific atheistic worldview or a religious Christian worldview. And I knew there was something else to the equation that I intuited very early on. And so pretty much my whole life, it's just been a constant quest for truth and trying on different belief systems and studying different philosophies. And yeah, one thing led to another. And about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, I started an organization with a musician friend of mine. So I'm also a musician.
Yeah.
You can see, got a drum set.
Nice.
I have a whole like recording studio kind of set up in front of me, so that between work I can play music. But anyways,
yeah, I do remember, joining one of your live broadcasts. What it was about business marketing, but you were playing some music in advance. That was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we decided we had an interest in sort of esoteric thought and alchemy and these sort of spiritual ideas and systems that have been really popping up in recent years. And I really found a lot of resonance with a lot of that stuff. And it started to bridge into philosophy and getting into these philosophers like Plato and Pythagoras and all these characters. And we created a system that basically merges the art of music with these sort of alchemical, spiritual, philosophical ideas. And the idea was to sort of find a way to embody some of these spiritual ideas and philosophies into an art form, right? And it proved to be really successful. People really loved it. We were doing multiple retreats, sometimes 2 retreats a year in Hawaii, and had people come from all over the world. And just 2 years ago, we hosted our biggest retreat yet. We had 70 people, sold out a retreat center. in Hawaii, right next to where I was living. And on the first day of the 2-week-long retreat, the volcano started erupting in a nearby neighborhood. And
I remember that.
It was a wild, wild experience. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of my time in Hawaii. And I've been kind of uprooted since then.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
So I wanna jump right into the ideas and the philosophy, because I think it's I'm fascinated by what you've created. This is really cool. Spirituality and music. So maybe we'll start with the spirituality part. Like, what's your view on what this reality is about?
So, okay, what it really comes down to, and the view that I really adhered to for the last, I would say, 10 years, is really based on what I would call like a oneness view, right? Which basically says that everything is actually one thing. We all come from the same source. And we all go back to the same source. Another analogy that people like to use is that, you know, if we call, it looks like George got dropped, but
No, I'm okay. Here. I'm just testing out this whole live stream thing. I'll just highlight you when you're speaking.
Now I know that you didn't disappear.
Yeah, I'm still one with you.
Great. So in that view, there's this sort of endless eternal ocean, which you could call God or source, right? And somehow that source sort of condenses into droplets and becomes individuals. And then each of those individuals you could liken to a soul, or, you know, I'm a drop, you're a drop, we're all drops, part of this ocean. And eventually we go back to the great ocean, sort of merge with it, and thus we lose our individual identity. So this is very much resonant with like a Buddhist worldview. A lot of the Eastern religions are based on this idea that there's this one being, this one God, Brahman, that is sort of dreaming this world into existence. And so our sense of self, what makes me me, is actually just totally an illusion, and that I'm really just this one being that we all are, that is just dreaming what's happening. So in that view, it's very much based on this idea that we don't actually exist. Like, my sense of self is just a temporal thing that'll eventually just remerge with the great source, great spirit, whatever you want to call it. So there's a sort of extending out and then a drawing back, just like the tides in the ocean. And that was really the core of my belief system up until more recent times, when I stumbled upon a certain set of authors and books that were just opening up some new ideas that take this whole analogy a little bit further. And so what I've been starting to play with now is this idea that, yes, there is a sort of kind of underlying reality that we come from. And in that underlying reality, we are all one in a certain sense. But if there's one, then what's to stop there from being an infinite number of ones, right? Which goes to say that instead of there just being one being, one entity, one self, so to speak, there could be an endless number of selves. And this kind of leads to some really interesting ideas, that what this means is that we're actually eternal, not temporal. You know, we're temporal in the sense that we have a body for a short amount of time, kind of like an avatar. But there is a part of us that doesn't actually die, that doesn't have an expiration date. And that flipped a lot of my ideas and beliefs on its head, because now who I am in truth, not this personality or this sort of fleeting experience that I'm having as Andy, there is an actual more fundamental eternal sort of soul aspect, right? And so the way I'm starting to see it is that in the source, or in the sort of Godhead that existed before all this reality existed, we were existing as souls without any sort of reality construct yet. It's kind of like if this is the extended material domain of stuff and emotions and experiences, then the singularity is where all of that kind of sucks into itself into this sort of pointless point, right? And the idea being that, you know, in the classic idea, perspective of oneness, that point is just one point, and there's sort of the multitudinous loses its multitudinous, and everything just becomes one without any differentiation. But what I'm starting to explore is the idea that maybe there's actually an infinite number of pointless points all existing within the same pointless point, which means that we're all eternal. And that you see how it's like it's a very subtle little tweak, but it does have some big implications.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that. I'm not sure I'm totally catching on yet, because obviously you've been thinking about this for quite some time, and you see all the connections. What I'm really curious about, and it kind of came from that comment that you made in the thread some time ago, which was, okay, I'll just share kind of what, in as concise as I can, what I think the greater reality is, and then let's kind of play off of that, right? That's and great. You could tell me what your perspective is, et cetera. So, and maybe I'm going to be starting to borrow some of what you said in that comment, but I kind of already believe that, but kind of your comment made it like, oh yeah, that's right, that's a way. So basically, I'll use two movies which illustrate what we're talking about: The Matrix and Avatar. Right? I think those are really good analogies to start with. So The Matrix, all of us know, it's so popular now. It's like, oh, we're actually, the Matrix, the idea is that we're actually, the real us is encased in this somehow, this is a simulation. The Earth, what we feel every single day is a virtual simulation, and our real selves are being like broadcast as a virtual self in the simulation. And, we get to interact with each other in this so-called world. But our real selves are somewhere else. So that's the Matrix. So this is the Matrix, right? I really like the idea, and Avatar, which is a more recent movie, kind of took that even farther. Well, maybe not farther, actually. It's pretty much the same idea, except except that in Avatar, there's like two physical realities happening, whereas in Matrix, it's like one is physical, one is virtual, right? And so actually, maybe Matrix is a better analogy. But the thing about Matrix that's different is that I believe that our base reality, the real thing, the real us, is more so the real us is actually, well, first of all, it's actually going to be more real than what we're feeling right now. That's why there's so much talk about the dream. This is Brahman dreaming this whole thing up. Why is it a dream? I mean, it feels, I poke myself and it hurts. It feels real. So why is it a dream? Well, it's only a dream when we consider the fact that when we're no longer in this body and we're back in the next body, astral body, whatever you want to call it, body, okay, subtle body, maybe those are even different things. But when we're back in the astral body or whatever, then it's like, oh my God, no, this is real. Like, this is way more real than the George Cal, Andy Freeland physical self was back when we were on Earth. This is way more. That was just a dream. Like, we'll feel like we just woke up, like, oh, we were just dreaming. We barely even remember what it was like on Earth, and this is the real thing, the astral body. But of course, it's actually probably like what you said. It's actually turtles all the way down. I mean, it's actually subtle, more and more subtle all the way in. It's like we think the astral body is real when we die. This physical body dies. We're in the astral body. Oh, this is real. This is amazing. This is a heaven. This is amazing. And then, of course, that astral body can die. Can also be. We can de-shell from our astral body and then go into the subtle body or an even more subtle consciousness. And that's even more real and even more connected to the source. And it's like we're always trying to find that next level up to the source where we are really more connected. And so that's one way I like to think about it. The other way I like to think about it is, and similarly, because this is a virtual simulation, this is a freaking video game.
Yeah.
Like, this is a video, and I played video games growing up, and I still play some now, but it's like, this is a video game. And I think it's a really good analogy because video games have monsters, have obstacles, and role-playing. This is a major, like, billions of players just like Player One. I guess that's another movie I'll bring in, right? This is a massively multiplayer online video game with monsters, with obstacles, and with character development. You know, I grew up playing the Ultima series of video games, and it was like Ultima 4 was my favorite because it was talking about virtues. It was such a big influence in my growing up. It's like you develop these virtues for this avatar, the character. They call it the avatar, you know, and the avatar develops virtues through various challenges. It's like you develop courage, you develop love, you develop humility, you develop spirituality, all these things. I'm like, that's freaking what we're doing here. It's like every challenge I come across, there's almost like an invisible scoreboard somewhere, you know, in my consciousness, subconscious, that's like, ooh, +1 for courage, you know, -1 for humility, you know, +1 for agility or whatever it may be. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as that's what I really think is happening. I really believe it. Like I've never, because I used to be evangelical Christian. I don't know about you. I used to be Buddhist growing up. That was my culture. And then I became saved by Billy Graham and became evangelical Christian. But even as a Christian, I always had to try to convince myself it's true. Like Christians are, like, I don't want to say all Christians, at least for me and many of my friends, we were secretly doubting. Like we were like having to hammer the beliefs into our head because we were overcompensating for that subconscious doubt.
Yep.
You know, it's like, oh, I really, really want to believe, so I have to convince other people to believe because I subconsciously am really scared it's not really all true.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I dealt with the loss of fear and fear of hell for 2 years after I lost my faith. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to hell. Right. And then after all this, after lots of reading and stuff, now I'm landed here in this faith. But I have no longer, I don't have a subconscious doubt anymore. Like it's so real for me. It's so true for me. Like I don't feel like I have to convince anybody. I'm just sharing because I'm so excited about it. You know, I'll stop here and let you take over because I really want to hear what you think about all this and what how you work with all this. Yeah.
You touched on a lot of points, and you know, you were right that like the way I'm seeing this, it's a very complicated thing, even though it is also very, very simple. It's just it kind of requires a bit of a paradigm shift, and you kind of have to see how all the parts fit together in order for it to really blossom, so to speak. But you said a lot of things that are in direct resonance with some of my more recent philosophic explorations, and this idea of the dream is really at the core of it, right? So, you know, one of the Eastern ideas is that we are Brahma or Brahman, dreaming reality. Okay. So a good way to think, you know, this idea that reality is a dream, the best way to think about this is when you go to sleep at night and you have a dream,
Mm-hmm.
you're having an experience, and for all intents and purposes, it is real. You can't tell that it's not real when you're in it. If you're lucky and you practice, you can go lucid, which is where you realize you're dreaming. It doesn't make the experience any less real. It just you develop a recognition that, oh, this is a dream. Okay, I'm still in it. I'm still having an experience, but now I can actually start to like shape and shift it to my liking. So the thing it's interesting about that is that when you dream at night, where are you? You're experiencing things. You're experiencing extension, which is just space, right? You're experiencing the ability to talk to people and inhabit spaces and have experiences. But where are you, right? You're not really anywhere. You're just in your mind. That's where it's all taking place, which isn't really anywhere at all. Okay. So then if we take that to the level of our shared consensus reality, and we say, okay, reality is a dream, but that doesn't make any sense because like this thing is this thing and I can't change what this is, right? The reason that this is what it is and can't be changed by me just willing it to be something else is because I'm not the only one having this dream, right? We are having this dream. Everybody is having this dream. So the dreamer is not just one dreamer. It's actually a multitude of dreamers that are all dreaming the same dream, and thus no one of them has any sort of
Absolute power.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't change the dream for everybody else, but that doesn't mean the dream's not changeable. It just means that we have to be in agreement and we have to be working together. Okay. So it's this idea of in the same way we can go lucid in our sleeping dreams, I believe that we can actually go lucid collectively. And that's an interesting thing to explore. So
Well,
this
in a sense, Andy, I think once, I mean, but also individually too, it's interesting you bring the word lucid in for dreaming. Lucid is related to light, right? And so when an individual wakes up in this reality saying, my God, this is a simulation, this is a dream, whatever you want to call it, this is not real as compared to heaven or the afterlife or whatever you want to call it, then we might say that person is enlightened.
Yeah.
Or has light, or lucid, has become lucid in this reality. It's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. Like Neo woke up and, well, Neo was able to fly. I mean, I can't fly, neither can you, as far as I can tell. But some people, I guess, can levitate, right? There's stories of that. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, I don't really know what I feel about the validity of somebody being able to levitate. I think that there is a point where things can get a little, the laws can be bent slightly. Now, whether someone else is seeing them levitate, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's, there's this idea of mind over matter.
Right.
Right. And if we look at like the dominant scientific worldview is that, and this is our whole, so science delivered us the modern world, medicine, all the, the great, it got us out of the jungle, so to speak. But now we're at this point where like science begins to fall apart at the singularity. It starts to fall apart when it tries to explain what mind and consciousness is and all these things that have no empirical basis, right? They can't be like touched and poked and prodded and measured. So science is just like, well, it doesn't exist then. It's not actually real. If we can't poke and prod it, then it's not a real thing. And so the fallacy of science is that it asserts that mind, living, intelligent mind, consciousness is somehow this product, and it's a total mystery how it works. They can't explain it, is a product of matter, which is to say that somehow death creates life. It doesn't actually really make any sense.
But of course, that's why the scientists are having a really hard time with what's called the hard problem of consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like saying, listen, we think it's matter creates mind, but we can't figure out how that works. And I think based on the podcast that I listen to, I'm hearing more and more scientists basically come around and say, listen, it's probably more like consciousness creates matter. We don't know how, but that's the theory. And actually, there's a guy, I wish I remembered his name right now, but he was recently on the Tom. He showed up in several podcasts recently. He's a scientist, with a good pedigree, with like major institutions behind him, who basically says his theory, and he's very humble about it. He says, this is my theory, and I'm probably wrong, but this makes sense to me right now, and we're trying to figure it out, is that reality is actually a social network of consciousnesses working together. His name is Don something. I forgot what his name is, but I'll have to look it up and I'll post it in the comments. But I'm like, there you go. I mean, that makes sense, right? That's what we've been talking about. It's a social network. And he's basically saying that the reality that we experience, and he actually got there from studying evolutionary biology, which is fascinating. Like he studied evolutionary biology, Darwin, and just worked his way back to say the only logical conclusion that we can come up with, and we're probably wrong, is that this reality is a social network of consciousnesses, that what we're experiencing in third dimensional physical reality is a headset, not literally a physical headset, but it's a representation of what's actually real. So this is not a table. This is not a computer. We just represent it as a computer, as a table, but it's really something else. It's maybe dots or whatever. But yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Okay. So this whole mind, the mind matter thing is really at the heart of it. And I believe that we are at the threshold of a paradigm shift that's bigger than going from flat earth to round earth. It's bigger than that.
Wow.
It's a bigger leap.
Yes.
And that leap reflects where we are at as a civilization. But science is at the end of its rope. It just can't go. It's at the looking glass, but it refuses to actually enter, right? Because its position is backwards. It's seeing everything inverted. But as soon as it flips it, like that one scientist, all of a sudden the whole thing opens up, because the orientation goes, oh wait, the real thing is mind. Matter is the unreal thing. Mind is eternal, immutable, unchangeable. It is the thing we can rely on. Matter is the fleeting dream. It's not that it's not real. It's just that it's like you said, a simulation. It's still real.
It's kind of like the laws of nature are more real than any one plant or any one animal, right?
So if they're in the same way that there's laws of nature like gravity,
right?
The thing about those laws is that they're also what's the word, like contingent. They were sort of created at a certain point with the birth of the universe, which the science explains as the Big Bang. Problem with science is that science can't go any further. They're just like, well, kind of like Christianity, like, well, it was God.
It's so funny. Like scientists just go, yeah, there was a Big Bang, there was a singularity, became like, but why? How? What the? How can you just say that? How can you just say that and say that is our faith? I mean, that's their faith.
It's a religion, straight up. So the whole point is that like the scientific worldview is basically that there is no point. There is no point. There's no meaning, right? There's no inherent like it's pure. It basically reduces to pure atheistic. What's the word? Nihilism. Yeah, yes. It's just everything's meaningless and relevant, and every truth is equally valid because there is no truth, right?
Yeah.
When that flips around,
it's so interesting because whenever I hear that nihilism and like there's no meaning, there's no truth, there's only, essentially what that brings us to is, well, then there's only the pursuit of power.
Yeah, but it's just blind power. Like it's like just dumb power.
Because if there's no exactly. If there's no truth and purpose and what is good versus bad, right? Then there's only, I have more power to do whatever makes me feel good in this world. And essentially that kind of leads us into psychopathy. Everyone can become psychopaths because it's like, well, I'm just here. I mean, if there's no truth, I'm just trying to make things as comfortable and pleasurable for myself as possible for as long as possible.
That's what leads to free market predatory capitalism and all the ideologies that go right into it. It's all, our whole society is based on ego, like not ego gratification, but actually gratifying the id, the Freudian id, which is the pleasure principle. It's about it's about me, my, me and mine, and
of course it's me and my in the shortest term. Only this body. This is the only thing
that's the identity is anchored in the what's actually not eternal. It's anchored in the contingent, fleeting existence that we have for a moment, and doesn't recognize the larger picture.
So hey, I just want to do a quick time check. Originally, I thought it was going to be half hour. I extended so that I canceled I had a focus mate session that I canceled. So I can go for longer. How about you? Are you okay with time?
I have another meeting at the top of the hour, but I can do another 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, let's do that. And I'm just appreciating some of the comments that are coming through. Patricia and Moicha, they're joining us on YouTube, and appreciate you all. And let's see, there are a couple questions I want to bring forth for us to discuss. So let me just kind of go back and see. Okay, yes. So we'll take this one from Moicha here. Oh, this is so cool. I can put this on the screen here. So she wrote, what do you feel about our personality shadow from the soul perspective? Are we, as the soul in the center, aware of all the parts, but free of them?
That's a really, really great
I'll let you take that one.
So the shadow is a concept that was created by Carl Jung, and he basically merged sort of philosophy and spirituality with psychology. And he also coined a lot of the ideas of archetypes and whatnot that are very much centered in a lot of belief systems. But anyways, this idea of the shadow. So our shadow is the part of ourself that we reject, right? And I believe that one of our primary tasks, one of the, you're talking about that we're in a game. I totally believe that. And I do want to expand on that in a bit. But part of the game is integration of the self. It's achieving wholeness. And we don't do that by denying us of ourselves. We do that by fully embracing the self. So, we were talking about Christianity. What I've been noticing about Christianity is Christianity has a big, big shadow, and that's why it's always pointing the finger at the devil, at Satan. It's everything is this big baddie out there. And then you look at the track record and the horrible things that have been done in the name of Christianity. And that's a perfect example of what happens when the shadow is repressed and not dealt with. And, we start hearing about all this kind of crazy things that happen in the Catholic Church with priests, and what I'm talking about. And it's, that's all shadow stuff. So when the shadow goes unchecked, then we can get into trouble. But when it becomes fully integrated, and that means completely accepting the self and all of its, glory, and sometimes can be a little icky. But once the shadow is fully accepted, that ick kind of just takes care of itself. It dissolves. So it's kind of the only way to be free of the shadow is to accept the shadow. It's a kind of an interesting thing. So it's really it's like radical self-acceptance.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of like if you the word shadow, of course, comes from the physical idea of a shadow, and it's like if you're scared of your own shadow, like you say, look back, oh my God, there's someone following me. That's this ghostly image that's always following me, and you're scared of it. Then you obviously create hell for yourself just walking around, whenever the sun's shining. But when you look back, oh, that's my shadow. Okay, it's always following me. It's just another. Then it's like you accept it and you're like, oh, it's no big deal. I don't have to live my life giving into it.
It's interesting too, if we look at, as above, so below, what's micro is a reflection of what's macro. So we could say that this whole entire physical universe is the shadow of the source. Right. Where
that's cool.
The source, the mental, there's this dichotomy between mind and matter. If we say the source, God, oneness, spirit, all of that's just synonyms for mind, the mental domain. And then the physical world is matter, is stuff, is time, all these things. So the realm of light, the realm of mind, casts the shadow of the physical world, and that's what we're in right now. And so to kind of elaborate on your point that this is like a game, I agree. It is like a game. And the thing about games is that there's a way to win games. There's a point to the game.
Yeah, right? There's a purpose.
There's a purpose. There's a point. And in most cases, in order to really win a game, especially at a big level, if we look at what's the biggest games that are played is war and big business and that kind of stuff. And in order for those big games to happen, it is massively orchestrated, collaborative. We're all working together to achieve this goal. And so this gets to the question of all right, what is the point? It's been a big question for me. Why am I here? What is the point of this? I really need to know so I can get on with it, because I'm not satisfied not knowing and just acting blindly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's been becoming more clear to me that, so I guess one way to look at it is that where we all come from, the pre-Big Bang, okay? Basically, if you take all the matter that was generated by the Big Bang, what the Big Bang represents, they say it's imagine the size of a pea, the entire universe just condensed to the size of a pea. That's still a materialistic perspective, okay? Because what it really was a matterless, dimensionless point that exists in the domain of mind, which is is the domain of mind. The domain of mind doesn't actually have mass or volume in that sense, right?
Right.
Just in the same sense that when you dream, you're not actually anywhere at all, but just in your own imagination.
Yes. Yes.
So basically in that space, all of that stuff, all those souls, all of us, we're all existing in the same space in complete perfect harmony, right? There's no separation. There's individual souls. It's like I like to think of it as like a hive mind or something, like a collection of consciousness, multiple consciousnesses or souls, but they all are existing in such perfect harmony that for all intents and purposes, they're all one. You can't even tell. It's, you know what I mean? So what the Big Bang does is it takes that perfect harmony and that perfect everything existing in the same place and explodes it into infinite pieces. It's like the perfect cosmic mirror gets shattered, right? And that creates entropy and introduces sort of disharmony and that's what creates the physical world. It creates the shadow, right? So it's kind of like, I guess one way you could look at it is that in that moment, God sort of exploded and became the devil or became the shadow, you know, if you want to play that kind of analogy. And so then the whole process of evolution began, and it, you know, began with the most simple organisms evolving into higher and higher organisms. And then before you know it, you've got humans that, you know, that what separates us from all the other types of creatures is that we became conscious, right? And so I feel like what we're doing is we're sort of just at the dawn of consciousness. And there's an evolutionary sort of draw, right? Like we're evolving towards something. So then the question is, well, what are we evolving towards? Like, what is the point of this? Where, you know, science's version of evolution is meaningless. What science says is basically eventually it's just the universe is gonna like, what they say, like it's like it'll freeze basically. It'll just kind of like die and then it'll just go dark and then that'll just be forever, right? But what I've been starting to see is that point of the Big Bang, you could, if you were to imagine that before that, the Rubik's Cube was solved perfectly. And then in a moment, it just scrambled infinitely. And now what's been happening and what the whole process of evolution is the eventual resolving of the Rubik's Cube, right?
I like that a lot. Yeah. And it reminds me of, well, how we learn anything. It's like we start with ignorance, or thinking we know it all. And then as we learn more, we're like, oh my God, we know nothing. Oh my God, this is so complicated. Oh my God, there's so much to know. Oh my God, there's so much to study. Oh, and then we study, we learn more, we experience more. And as we do more and more and more, everything becomes simpler for us until at one point, there's almost nothing to say. Like the other day, I was thinking, you know, this is back in my, you know, my day job, my regular career. I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing I can say to my audience other than create. like that's all. If I were just to die right now, if I just leave one word or experiment, like that's like, if I could just tell my audience, like there's only one course I have left to teach. It's just one word: experiment. If you do that consistently, you'll figure it out. You'll find your purpose. You'll build your business. Just don't stop experimenting, right? And it's like that. I just feel like the Big Bang is kind of like, you know, that journey you're bringing us on. It feels a little bit like that. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and Patricia has got a couple questions here, and maybe we could do like lightning round kind of thing.
I would like to just close on. I have just a thought. I would like to close on, or at least kind of to tie this all up.
Yes, please do.
Is that there's this sort of evolutionary track, right? And what my belief was, which is influenced by the Eastern viewpoint and the sort of traditional oneness perspective, is that the name of the game is to use meditation and transcendent techniques to sort of go back to the source, right? As if it's a sort of regressive thing that all of this is a mistake. I need to like turn the wheel around and flip around and then head back to the source and become God, basically, that way, by unbecoming myself. Okay. what I'm seeing now is that it's actually, I've flipped that entire thing. And instead of it being about going back, it's about going forward. And that in this perspective, instead of seeing God as the creator of the universe, I'm actually seeing God, or whatever, whatever you want to equate to that, as the ultimate creation of the universe. And that is the point. That is the thing that we are all, the trajectory of the universe is basically this idea of God pre Big Bang is God unconscious. Where we're headed is God conscious.
Whoa, that's
okay.
big.
Yeah,
that's really big. I've never heard anyone say that God started as the creator, and now he's becoming, or he or she, all that is becoming the creation. God is becoming creation, becoming conscious, right?
Yeah. So what that means is that God in the beginning wasn't some bearded sky wizard that's shouting out orders to people, because that would be conscious, right?
Yeah, right.
it was more of these unconscious laws of mind that are actually more mathematical and logical in nature, completely rational, and that those rational laws sort of are what generated the universe, almost just like computer code or something. But it's there's a lot more to be said there, that I'll just plant that seed. But anyways, the whole point is that we're on a trajectory to become whole, to become complete, to go back to that perfect symmetry, but in a completely conscious matter where we all go together.
Yeah, and that's so cool.
The game for me is, it really comes back to self-development. Yes. And that's what we're doing, is this process of becoming more whole and becoming perfect and becoming the best us. And collectively, like the main thing for me is recognizing that enlightenment is not an individual task. That is the societal task. That's, I'm envisioning a world that we can live in within our lifetimes, perhaps, that instead of just being this huge shrine to mammon and consumer culture, that the whole point of society is to fulfill this process of, everybody becoming what they truly, truly are. Right.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So
yeah. Awesome. So I want to do a couple of lightning round quick questions, and then I'd love for you to end on a few minutes with, well, what's next? Do you have, are you doing the retreats again, but virtually, for example? So, all right. So Patricia's question is, how do you feel about mysticism, Kabbalah, Tarot? Is there a place for that?
So I actually, through my work with audio alchemy, I got really into Kabbalah, Tarot, alchemy, just all things esoteric, magic, all that stuff. And there is definitely some value in it. And in many cases, these things like Kabbalah, they have the truth in a very coded mythological sense. So it's easy to get lost in the mythological aspect of it and sort of miss what is the real truth of it. But to me, that's kind of what the whole point of these esoteric systems are about. It's you have to learn to decipher it, right? Mm-hmm. So with that said, I do see a really big value in tarot specifically, because what tarot is actually, it's a psychological tool, right? And it's a tool that helps you understand yourself. We're talking about shadow. It can absolutely go hand in hand, and it's really a completely genius psychological tool that was created, hundreds of years ago. There's a lot of mystery about where it came from, but I do see a lot of value in that. The key, though, is that what I'm beginning to realize is there's a very clear distinction between, there's two sort of forces, you could say. There's mythos and logos, right? We've heard the idea of logos. In the Bible, it says God is logos, all this stuff. Mythos is basically anything that's just, it's a stories, right? It's myth. It's in many cases, it's using tales, it's using lies to tell the truth, right? It's a finger pointing at the moon. Logos is the moon. Logos is the truth. Logos is reason. Logos is the realm of 2 + 2 = 4, always and forever. It can't change. And mythos can serve to tell stories about why 2 + 2 = 4 and what that means and all this kind of stuff. So Kabbalah is logos wrapped in mythos. So it's just you have to be able to see past the stories to get to the real like crux and heart of it, if that makes sense.
Sweet. I like your dog back there. What's your dog's name?
Ella.
Nice.
Yep.
So I'll just say real quick, I think I believe in any system that actually produces more caring, wise humans on a practical level. So, I mean, I feel like sometimes people get into particular schools of thought and rituals and things. I'm like, okay, you're really good at that, but you're still a jerk. You know, and the dog agrees.
Yeah. That's a really good measure, is that, behind all the rhetoric and the details, like what are the followers actually doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can be PhD in any religious or esoteric system, but are you actually a nicer, more wise person, more courageous, more humble, more all the virtues that are actually the scoreboard in our virtual simulation game? It's like, right. Anyway, it's my quick point of view. You know what? Let's actually wrap up at this point. And so Andy, I'm really curious. You started out with the physical retreats. Are you going to do virtual retreats on this stuff?
Yeah. So the Audio Alchemy project is a kind of on hold at the moment. My business partner is a touring musician from the UK, and he was living in Hawaii with me for a while we were doing this, and he moved back to Scotland after the lava thing happened, and we moved to mainland, and so we just kind of have put that on the side burner, and so this is giving me space to really get clear on like what do I want to do within myself.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm doing right now that I'm really excited about is sort of in the same way that I applied these ideas to the art of music, I'm now doing the same thing to the art of business and to the art of just creativity in general, and turning that to your livelihood.
Yes.
And so you kind of mentioned in the beginning, I started a project called Dreamsync that is basically a website and brand creation platform, like a Kajabi or something like that. But I'm applying these ideas and philosophies to that whole process. And ultimately for me, I'm interested in, I have this evolutionary perspective where I realize like what the game is that we're all actually playing. And so for me, I'm interested in creating businesses and experiences that help sort of enlighten on these ideas, and also get us working together. And to me, collaboration is the key. Like, we're not going to get out of this really hard situation that we're in and that we've been in just in pre-pandemic. The world is, for anybody that has a heart, there's something really not right going on in the world. And for me, it's about, everybody's out for themselves. It's the law of the jungle, really.
Right.
And until we can learn to collaborate and work together, then we're not going to be able to really move forward in a big way. So that's kind of what it's all about for me. And so with this platform that I'm creating, so right now, if you go to the website, it's kind of a like coming soon page. None of the links or anything work quite yet. That's my next key. So if anybody goes there, just know that.
But you've got a lot of the description there already. Dreamsync.org.
It explains.
Looks great. So, but yes, I mean the actual being able to sign up is coming soon.
Yeah. But so basically it's I'm just looking to like stir it up a bit and change the way that we approach doing business, and get, like my dream is, and the whole idea of Dreamsync is, my dream is that we are all autonomous, powerful creators doing what we're here to do, and we're all doing it together in a very conscious and intentional way.
Yeah.
And, for me, I feel like that's, the best I can do with my resources right now.
Yeah. It's awesome, man. Well, I wish you the best, and of course, you know, those watching this will, some of you might be interested, and please connect with Andy. Andy, do you have another? What's your main personal website?
Yeah, so the main one that I've been using for my design agency is opulentcreative.com.
Right.
And that hasn't even been, I haven't updated that in years. I'm kind of like, I've kind of been like a shoemaker with old raggedy shoes in
Yeah.
that way. But yeah, that's where I've been doing my agency work. But I do have a few other websites that I'm working on launching, like my personal brand, Andy Freeland. You can also look at the Audio Alchemy project at audioalchemy.io.
Okay. Cool. Audioalchemy.io. I'm just gonna put that up on the page. But anyway, I think we can end it here.
Yeah.
Andy, thank you so much for doing this conversation. Thanks to Patricia and Moitza for joining us live on the YouTube chat. I don't see anybody on the Facebook chat, but maybe later there'll be comments underneath that. All right, man.
Thank
Wish you well, and to be continued.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, we could definitely do that again.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
Peace.